welcome to Property Question Time. I'm your host, Taylor Welch. This is the show where you get to ask your property-related questions to our panel of industry experts. I'm joined today by Jerry Allen of Keller Williams Brazos West, Heather Kingston, Realtor of the Cates Group, and Gary Pierce, founder of Pure Funding. Thank you all so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Our first question goes to Gary, and the subject is partnership purchases. The question reads, can an LLC purchase a property for running cattle or horses? If so, are all the members liable for the repayments?
So good question, and I'll kind of elaborate a little bit more than just kind of agriculture related and as it relates to LLCs, because there's a lot of different aspects to an LLC when it comes to lending. But anytime you have an LLC, all in looking to finance a property, all LLC members have to be on the. Most lenders are going to require them to be on the note, which means tax returns, possibly W-2s, income statements, that sort of thing. So yeah, they're gonna need to be on that note. They'll probably also be on the title through the LLC. And that kind of goes for more investment properties as well. So we do a lot of investment type properties, and so fix and flippers or folks that have Airbnbs, they'll like to do that through an LLC for obvious protection reasons. And so at that point, any LLC member would then also be required to be on the loan as well.
Just for clarity, what is an LLC?
So it's a limited liability corporation, right? And so it's just a legal document that kind of sets up who you are as a company, kind of gives you an articles of organization, how you're actually organized as a company, and who is the members of that organization, who's on that. Outside of that, I always refer those legal questions to an attorney. I don't want to get into any trouble, but that kind of gives you the structure of what it is.
Thank you, Gary.
Yep.
Our next question is for Heather, and the subject is boundary disputes. The question reads, what is the process for settling a boundary dispute where there is no fence line of obvious boundary? I ask in the context of a family having a property for several decades, and there has never been a dispute until a new owner has taken it over and now believes at least 1 acre of my land is theirs.
Well, the first thing I would do is have the clients call surveyors. The surveyor can survey out both properties. They're going to survey out both properties. They're going to go look at any existing surveys if there are any. If there aren't any, then it'll be a little bit more difficult because they put these little metal rods into the ground that they find, and they put those on the boundary lines. Anytime there's a curve or a change, they put one of those little metal rods down, and they find those. And there have been instances where people that are angry might pick up that metal rod and scoot it over a little bit to, create a little bit of an issue. But when you're talking about acreage, those metal rods are recorded on the survey in what we call meets and bounds and compass points. So there's really, as long as there's at least one existing survey, there's not tons of question as far as this goes. I had an instance once where my client was going to buy this property, and this guy had moved in first, and he just eyeballed it and was pretty sure that his fence line went right here, and he put a fence 25 feet over onto the property that my clients were buying. And I actually called him, that buyer or that other man on the phone. He was super nice about it, was absolutely mortified that he made such a silly, decision putting that boundary line over, because he had multiple big buildings along that property line as well that would need to be moved. But the best thing to do, if you're putting anything permanent fence line in, have the surveyors that did your survey come out and put fence line markers so that you can be sure that you're putting your fence line right on the boundary line. Because that's a very costly thing to have your fence be over on another property. So, work it out with the surveyor. And I'm sure that it can be figured out, but it's a process.
Absolutely. Thank you, Heather. Our next question is about USDA loans for Jerry. Our question reads, are USDA loans only available for land? If not, what else could be financed and how easily?
Well, technically, USDA doesn't do the land loan. it's done by the FSA, isn't that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, and they do just land-only loans. And the USDA is the United States Department of Agriculture. You can go on their site, usda.gov, and you can enter any property in Texas, any address in Texas, and it will show whether that property is available for USDA financing. So that just shows you the eligibility of the property. And you'd be surprised at some of the properties that are available for it. I mean, you're not going to find $1 million properties in an HOA that's available for it, but you might be surprised at some of the things that actually are. I was. And these are, USDA loans are primarily designed for families that are trying to expand, or they're in a little bit lower income. As a matter of fact, there is an income limitation. They can't make more than X amount of dollars to be able to buy a property. There is a property value limitation as well. But you can buy a house with land, and USDA can do that. FSA has to do just the land only. But it's a good way for somebody to, like, say, for instance, somebody comes in from another state and they want to start a farm, a family farm. Well, they can find some houses that are available, might even be something that needs to be fixed up, because USDA is not real stringent on a lot. They're not like FHA and VA on some of their property requirements. They'll let a few things slide. Each of those programs has their own little checklist of things that has to be done in a certain order. And income to debt ratio, that's a big one, debt to income ratio. But you can find properties on that map anywhere that you can find a property that's available. You have to find what the qualifications are. You talk to somebody like Gary here, and he says, yep, I can get you qualified for a USDA loan. They take a little longer, maybe up to 60 days, but they're zero down. So that's about the only other zero down loan there is besides a VA loan. It's very advantageous for people that are economically challenged and needing to start, and they want to go ahead and do something good with their life, but they just need a little hand up. It's a good way of being able to do it, and it encourages urban development and rural development. Parts of Granbury that, where I happen to live, parts of Granbury have fingers that have really nice houses on really small tracts, and I'm going, you're going to tell me that's a USDA eligible? Yep. Might change tomorrow, but right now it's eligible and ready to go. So it's a great way to get in when you don't have any money to be able to put down on the house. As you would expect, the interest rate might be a little bit higher because they're financing the entire amount. But sometimes it's more about being able to get in and make the monthly payments than it is being able to have a bunch of money down. It's a great vehicle for a lot of people.
Thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome.
Our next question is open for the panel for discussion and debate. The question reads, are property inspections a legal requirement in the sale process of the home?
The key word there is legal. Mm-hmm. And the answer is no. Mm-hmm. You do not have to legally have a property inspected. Again, this goes back to best practice. In the past 2 years, we saw some crazy stuff. And as a listing agent, if you're getting a contract that has no option period, sometimes that means that they're not going to do an inspection and negotiate repairs. But not necessarily. You are still, there's a portion of the contract that says that the seller has to give the buyer reasonable access to perform any repairs that they want to. So you should always expect an inspection. I have never told my clients, absolutely you should buy this without an inspection, unless I know that they are highly skilled in construction and they're planning on rehabbing this property and taking it down to the studs anyway. But an inspection is always necessary in my opinion.
I make them sign a waiver saying that they've chosen not to get an inspection.
At closing, as a listing agent, I ask them to sign a walkthrough and acceptance form as well, and that has a lot of sections on it that discusses the inspection. Did they physically view this property? Was this property inspected? Did an inspector come back and re-inspect the property afterwards? And do we accept it in its current condition? And that takes all of the liability off of the listing agent as well as the seller. So that is something that is super important for a seller.
Now, from the buyer's perspective, you want an inspection. It's an expense, it's out of your pocket, it's money that's gone. As soon as you paid for it, it's gone because you paid that person to come get it. Our inspectors in Texas are held to a pretty high standard, and they have a form that they have to fill out on every one of the inspections. They have to take pictures with everything, and they have to be very specific as to anything that is a fault or even a perceived fault. Because they have liability insurance that says, hey, if a reasonable person should have figured that this was a problem and you didn't come up with it, you can be sued. So what they want to do is expose every possible flaw in the house. And so you'll get inspection reports that are this thick. And the buyer's going to go, oh man, I don't want that house, that's terrible. That's when we have to come in and calm them down and say, hey, it's not a big deal. They found a mosquito in that room, okay? Some little things like that. But some of them are big, and they may be the big thing that's maybe a big foundation problem that they didn't see. The seller may not even have known. That might be an issue where the potential buyer can say, I'm in my option period. I don't think I want to go through with a contract with a house with a foundation problem. Or they might get a foundation person to come over and inspect that and say, okay, fine, your foundation's okay, you can continue with it. But they're usually for the protection of the buyer, so that they know without a doubt what it is they're getting, what it is they're buying into. And then there's the portion of the contract that says, I am buying the property as is. Well, that means with the inspection. So after you've already had the option to inspect it, and the seller has already given you your seller's disclosure, which says, these are the things I know about that are wrong, and you've signed that, then there's two people that have already said, hey, these are the things that are wrong with the property. You can continue or you can not. Then it's buyer beware.
Lenders love receiving inspections, right?
Yeah, inspections, actually it's the appraisals that usually throw us off, but the inspections are, I like an inspection for all the obvious reasons, right? Like,
sure.
I want my clients to know what they have going in, if there's going to be out-of-pocket costs that that were not negotiated, so they know what kind of the full kind of out-of-pocket costs are going to look like to acquire the house. But where we usually run into problems is that's when we get appraisals, especially like an FHA or a VA or loans like that get really tricky with appraisals, but inspections I'm a big fan, for sure.
100% necessary.
Yeah.
Thank you all for your answers on this. Don't go away. We'll be right back after the break to answer more of your property-related questions.
Howdy folks, I'm Jerry Allen, Global Realtor with Keller Williams Brazos West. I am your go-to guy for all things real estate. Whether you're looking for a piece of land or a large ranch, first home, next home, dream home, or your last home, I can guide you through the process till we find what you want. It's service like that that's kept me a top area producer for many years now. For more information, visit me online. Remember the name, Jerry Allen. Let's fulfill your next dream together.
Hi, I'm Gary Pierce with Pure Funding. We're proud to serve Texas and, more importantly, Parker County as your go-to residential and farm and ranch mortgage broker.
That's right. I'm Willis Richardson, and with our passion, products, and process, we'll get you to the closing table on time.
Give us a call or come by and see us. We're located right off the historic square in downtown Weatherford.
Or you can visit us first at our website at www.mypurefunding.com.
Hi, I'm Heather Kingston. Showing land on these ranches that we have out here in Parker County is one of my most favorite things to do. Come on, let's go take a ride. When choosing a buyer's agent, you have to have someone who has geographical competence and a vast knowledge of the area that you were choosing to purchase in. As a listing agent, my focus is to net the most for my sellers with the least amount of risk. That's such an important part of my job. And with a background of photography and videography, I bring everything to the table that we need to market your property to the best of our abilities.
Welcome back to Property Question Time. I'm your host, Taylor Welch. I'm joined today by Jerry Allen of Keller Williams Brazos West, Heather Kingston, Realtor of the Cates Group, and Gary Pierce, founder of Pure Funding. Thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you.
This question is for Gary about flipping. The question reads, to invest in a house purely to flip it, what kind of loan options are available?
So there's a few different options for flippers. So obviously with the advent of TV and cable television with the HGTV and Chip and Joanna down, and so that's been a huge topic around the country, not just here in Texas. So there are options. There's an option to do a bridge loan. You can do that. It's kind of a short-term loan. And there's what we also call is a fix and flip loan that we do. And I love this loan because what it does is it acts kind of in two ways. One is it allows you to acquire the property at a pretty reasonable down payment, so 15% down payment. And then it also, the lender will also finance up to 100% of the rehab, assuming the total value is 70% loan to value of the finished appraised value. So once you've gone in and done all the appraisal or all the rehab work, as long as that's 70% of the final appraised value, then you're good to go. So it's a great product for folks that are looking to get into the fix and flip, or even the fix and flip, fix and hold products where we would use the short-term loan, rehab the property, and then refinance into a conventional investor property for the investor as well. So a lot of options there in that market.
Thanks, Gary. Our next question is for Heather, and the subject is loan liabilities. The question reads, if a married person purchases a property while estranged from his or her spouse, can the spouse become liable for the loan at all?
Well, best thing to do is probably finalize your divorce prior to purchasing a new property. And if you're estranged, it's difficult. You know, some people separate and they just do trial separations for a long time and they don't want to be renting. And in that case, I mean, when you're purchasing a home with a loan, it is community property in Texas. And when you're purchasing it with a loan, there's something called a non-signing spouse. And it's used also for husband and wives where, you know, one is not working, one is working. You know, the person that's working is going to be the one on the loan, and then the spouse will be the non-signing spouse. So whoever is on the note is ultimately the one that is responsible for the note. The person that is estranged or that is not on the note is not going to be financially responsible for paying that note if the main person ends up not paying for the loan. It won't affect the credit of that other person. And if the first person defaults on the loan, it's also not going to affect the credit of the second person. But if they lose it, they lose it. So just get divorced.
Yeah, it's very tricky, especially because, as you mentioned, in Texas being a spousal state, it's the law. The spirit of the law is transactions that are done unbeknownst to an estranged spouse, that they are made aware of a refinance situation. Especially, we see it on the lending side a lot. Not so much on the purchase side, but we see it on the refinance side, where anybody on title has to sign at closing on a refinance from a spousal standpoint. So yeah, it's a little tricky.
Thank you both. Our next question is for Jerry, and the subject is benefits of location. The question reads, are there areas within North Texas where it's more beneficial to buy land or property in general rather than other areas?
It's a pretty broad question, and so I'll have a range of answers for you. Typically, it's going to depend on what kind of use you want for the property that you're going to buy. I mean, if you want to buy property to hunt on, up in Mineral Wells, Palo Pinto area, they've got the North Texas Hill Country in there. That's a great place for that type of thing. There's some out towards Abilene that are also really good for that type. It's rolling terrain, not just flat land. You know, flat land, of course, is great if you want to have pasture land to graze your horses or cattle, and the hill land won't work for it. Prices are much different in each one of those things too. You go out to West Texas, you can get 250 acres for squat. You know, you try to get that near Dallas or up in Denton, you can't even afford that. You have to get a small loan from another country. But generally speaking, in North Texas here for like horse ranches, Parker's really good for horse ranches. Also, Erath County around Stephenville. Any place that you've seen the cowboy capital of the world, Stephenville's that. Anywhere down there is really good for horse property. You can get a lot of property at a really good rate. Taxes are usually a little bit lower. Hood County's not bad either. It's starting to not be a lot of property available in Hood County because they were developing the heck out of it. But Erath is good, Somerville's good, Parker's good, Palo Pinto's good, even up to Hill. And if you went all the way up to the Red River, you've got some great property up there at decent prices. But again, it really comes back to what is your ultimate use for it. Each one of those uses is going to have a different type of financing available, different kind of ag possibilities, ag exemption possibilities for you. It just really depends on how much property you want and what you want to do with it.
All right, and when you're talking about investing in lakefront properties, a lot goes into the valuation of those properties as well as the increase in equity of those. Some lakes are different than others. Hood County, Granbury Lake is a very, very popular lake. It's one of the most popular lakes in North Texas, wouldn't you say, as far as, investment homes, vacation homes, weekend homes. I had a buyer looking in Granbury. It took us 2 years, and he was a cash buyer. 2 years to get under contract, and that was before the craziness of these 2 years. So values go up quite a bit on lakefront properties. And then there's, lakefront properties that are leasehold properties, like in Weatherford, and you have to be careful of that. Leasehold properties, I'm not sure how much the value goes up on those because technically you're not owning the land, which is a difficult thing to wrap your mind around, that you're purchasing a property, but you're not really. You're purchasing the rights to put improvements on that property. And the city owns that property. So you're actually leasing that land from the city for a period of 30 years. And then when, they go to sell that, the improvements are sold, but then the new buyer has to sign a leasehold with the city for that. So some lakes are better investments than others, and some appreciate faster than others. I would say, Hood County is Granbury is a fantastic lake to invest on. Palo Pinto is coming up. I mean, the Palo Pinto Lake, aren't they putting a state park in there? So I think the values of Palo Pinto are going to just skyrocket soon. Possum Kingdom, the values are already huge. They're already so high. I personally haven't sold on Possum Kingdom, so I'm not super familiar with the legalities of Possum Kingdom and how that's handled. But I mean, lake properties are in high demand, always a great investment.
How much does water levels impact the values, especially like if we're in a drought situation? Do you think people come in and scoop up deals on during droughts because the value might not be as high, or
100%? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
You bet.
In Granbury,
no question of that.
Yeah.
We had, I think it was back in 2014, we had a huge drought. A friend of mine that I went to high school with over in Taiwan, she came and she called me from Austin and said, "Hey, I'm tired of living in this crazy place. I want to come up to Granbury." I said, "Great, come on up." She came up. Our lake level was down 7 to 8 feet. You could walk across parts of the lake. On the places that had canals, you could go out and mow your canal. And that's serious. And so people were going, "Oh my gosh, it's never going to come back. I need to get rid of my property." Well, they went out and bought a property out in Abe's Landing, which is a nice community out there, lakefront property. But at this point, it's lake view property. You get out binoculars and there's the lake and this little trickle out there. And they paid $200,000 less than what the actual market value was. And I worked at the conference center at the time. And I'm trying to sell conferences at the Lakeside Conference Center. Well, nobody wanted a Lakeside Conference Center where there's no lake. But they were sending me down to Corpus Christi to go and sell a conference. So I get in the car with my wife. We're going down there. I'm going, I have no idea why I'm going down here. I can't sell a conference, but I'll take a free vacation for a couple days on the city. In the rear view mirror, I see storms happening as we're leaving. We beat the storm down there. The lake filled up in 1 day, 7 feet in 1 day. Problem gone. Mm-hmm. My friends were ecstatic because they made $275,000 in equity in 1 day. Mm-hmm. They're still living there. I said, "You guys ready to sell?" They went, "Heck no." But property values on the lake have just skyrocketed. Anything you have on the lake in Lake Granbury, you can pretty much just put it on the thing, and it's like throwing bread in a pond where there's just tons of crappie. They all come over there and they all fight over it.
Yeah.
Thank you for your answers and responses on this. Our next question is open for discussion amongst the panel. and the subject is flipping. The question reads, what advice can be given to someone who intends to start flipping as a second income stream?
Don't believe what you see on HGTV. You better have your money in place. You're financing that type of loan. There's also hard money loans. There's cash money loans. You may go in with a couple of other investors and do an LLC and use that money to go ahead and do it. You have to have your pool of contractors to do the things that you personally don't know how to do, which if you're me, it's all of them. Only thing I know how to do is buy property and get it, and somebody else can fix it. You need to have those things in place. You need to know what you're going to use the property for. You need to know the restrictions on the property, what you can and can't do with it. If it's in an HOA, what you can and can't do within that HOA. All of the built-in cost. If you're buying in an HOA, there's taxes, there's transfer fees, so all of that's up front, which usually you won't have somewhere else. So you have to build all of that into your upfront costs and then amortize that over the length of time that it's going to take you to get the thing rehabbed to where you can sell it. So you're paying, because just because you own the property doesn't mean you're not still paying money. You pay tax every month, whether you pay it now or when you sell it. You're paying tax, you're paying HOA dues every month now until you sell it. You have to maintain the property, cut the grass, do whatever you need to the property at the same time, and while you're rehabbing it and putting all the money into it. Costs might go up, like what's happened this year. You had resource costs go up, plywood, tons of money. Everything you can possibly think of was tons of money. Everything went way up because the supply chain was cut. So you have to build all of that into your back end. So you almost have to start at the end and say, okay, how much are we going to sell it for? This much. Okay, how much is the realtor going to get? It's going to cost me this much. How much am I going to have to spend to fix it? This much. How much am I going to do? So then you back and you're finally down to, I can afford to buy this property for this much. You got anything for minus $5,000? I'll take it.
Also, you have to be prepared that whatever you think it's going to cost, it's probably going to cost more than that.
Amen.
Because, once you take the sheetrock off the walls, you realize, oh my gosh, the electrical is a mess. Now I'm going to have to spend $5,000 redoing the electrical in this bathroom. And also, they vented this toilet to that toilet, and each toilet is supposed to be vented separately, and they were not vented separately. And so now I have to, have a plumber come through and put it, through the roof, and now I have to get a roofer involved and an AC person involved to put the vent through. So costs go up. So be prepared to spend more than what you think you're going to have to spend, and make sure that that's built into those final costs.
Absolutely, thank you. Sadly, that's all the time we have for today, but please keep your questions coming. You can send those in via our website, PAX180.com, or by emailing pqt@paxtelevision.com. My special thanks goes to our panel of industry experts today. Thank you all so much again for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Property Question Time with me, Taylor Welch, and we'll see you next time.